Scaling personalized student outreach with limited resources is tough. At Muhlenberg College, Shane Biglini used Element 451's AI first Ignite tools to generate a 12-month nurture campaign in minutes.
I remember sitting in a meeting. We were talking about long-term lead nurture for a graduate program. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to show off here a little bit. So I built out in the meeting, projecting on the screen, a 12-month nurture campaign, one email a month for 12 months. And I let it run in the background and I pulled it up on the screen and showed the emails. And they were like, how did you do that while we were talking about this? I didn't. AI did.
Harness the power of AI to communicate with students at scale in a single, streamlined marketing automation platform. Now your team can do more than ever with less time and effort. Visit element451.com to learn more.
Welcome to Mastering the Next, a cutting-edge podcast that explores the future of graduate, online, and non-traditional education through the lens of AI and technology. I'm your host, Dr. Ray Lutsky, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Element 451. Join me for discussions with some of the thought leaders shaping the future of graduate enrollment management through technology. Mastering the Next is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that helps institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. The MBA admissions landscape has undergone a seismic shift in recent years, with AI tools promising to help candidates craft the perfect application. But here's what fascinates me. We're seeing a growing tension between automation and authenticity, and that's apparent especially in the world of international MBA admissions. While generative AI can help write essays, the truly successful candidates are those who maintain their authentic voice. Today's guest, Eric Lucrezia of Candidate.Coach, is an independent consultant bringing over 2 decades of experience helping candidates across the globe navigate this delicate balance. And I'm particularly excited to explore how technology is both helping and challenging MBA applicants in 2025. Welcome to the podcast, Eric.
Hey, Ray. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with your world, the global nature of MBA admissions. You're based in Paris. You've worked in New York. You've seen what's going on. What trends do you see and what challenges persist despite our interconnected world?
Maybe to give it a little bit of context, you could talk about some of the differences we're seeing in Europe versus North America, particularly the US, which has almost, if you look at the Financial Times rankings, about half of the world's top ranked MBA programs, right? Another 30% in Europe and another 20% in Asia. But there's long been some differences between programs in North America versus Europe. The one that comes to mind first is like the duration of these programs, right? 2 years in North America, typically, often 1 year in Europe. Programs tend to be a lot bigger in the US, a bit more expensive. And let's face it, I mean, the MBA is an American invention originally. So there's far more people that have done MBAs in American schools in the United States, just because of the longevity of these programs. That said, I think they've kind of deviated on different paths in a lot of ways and certain philosophies and approaches to it. But as you mentioned, one thing that's kind of come to the forefront of a lot of people's mind for probably about 2+ years now since ChatGPT bust onto the scene, right? It's been very much, I mean, AI has been here for a very long time already. And a lot of our apps and tools and machines even, we just kind of didn't pay much attention to it. And now it's here, right? And the reaction from academia has been mixed. I remember early on when ChatGPT came out, I want to say, was it like March 2022? There were some school districts at the public school, like high school level, that were saying, okay, no use of AI. You know, there was a lot of fear-based reaction in terms of like assessment, you know, whether it's essays or reports and that kind of stuff, but also on the admissions side, of course. And I think in the business school world, which is kind of like when we're talking about top-ranked MBAs, whether in Europe or in the US, there are sort of gatekeepers into the business world, and the impact on society and so forth is huge. And the interplay between government, business, and society is very interesting. And so, not wanting to, I think, err on the side of fear-based reaction, they were conspicuously silent for a little while, but bit by bit, they've been developing their own policies in terms of the admissions process and what that looks like, how to incorporate AI. Pretty much there's general consensus that AI is here. It's not going anywhere. And our graduates, whether from the MBA or younger, like high school and so forth, they need to know how to use it. They need to be AI fluid. Societies or countries that fail to adopt this will be lagging behind, right? So they understand that they need to embrace it. And so it would be kind of hypocritical to say, okay, we need to teach this, but yet you can't use this in your admissions process. So where's that line between academic integrity and plagiarism? And that will vary from school to school. But general rule, if you want some advice about this, is one, read the website. Nearly every school clearly spells out on their website. It's often in their code of conduct. You can usually search for their code of conduct, and is very often a parallel code of conduct for current students, when you're taking classes as a student, as well as an applicant to the programs themselves. Sometimes they're in the application itself. There'll be like a box you have to check off saying that I acknowledge having used artificial intelligence, some kind of AI tool like ChatGPT or whatever, as part of your essays, for example, or CVs. Should also mention letters of reference. That might also be something that is asked about. Or sometimes you have to actually cite it within the essay itself, which means you might be gobbling up a couple of words. Usually there's a word count, right? A maximum number of words you have to express yourself. You might have to mention that you've used it. So there's different ways this is done. Failing to do so could result in a rejection without much explanation, whether it's your essays or the letters of reference or something else that has been checked with AI detection tools. And that's interesting to know and to be really aware of, that many schools, now, who knows if this is real or not, but the message that we've been hearing from many schools sort of on the unofficial is they're using AI detection software to scan for that. Now, the problem with this, and I can tell you people in my industry as an admissions consultant, we've been testing this out a lot, like putting actual, real, legitimate, written by a human, not AI at all, essays that have been even used for a successful admission process to top schools, putting them in some of these AI detection software and getting false positives. So this is a major source of concern. And I belong to an association called AGAC. It's the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. We do a conference every year attended by admissions directors of typically the top 25 or so American schools and top 10 or 15 European schools. And this is one of the big topics we're talking about the last couple of years.
I wanted to kind of double click on that for a second, Eric. And I was just thinking, you and I have known each other for 20 years working in higher education. I just realized thinking about it. And you have worked at a variety of different kinds of schools on both sides of the admissions desk. You worked at American schools, you worked at Essex Global MBA program, and now you're working as a consultant, and you're seeing these changes happen in real time. And even though there is this transparency that you're talking about, where yes, we want to say we're using these tools, and we want to say we're going to look at your essay using these tools, and also you might be using these tools, has it created more concerns among admissions committees and applicants? Are they worried now that exactly what you just said, like I'm going to write a really great essay and then it's going to get flagged as AI because it was really that great? And so, like, does it create new fears in an already anxiety-ridden process?
In short, I think it does create a lot of anxiety. At the same time, I think it's almost a moot point that people are going to swindle or trick the admissions office by using, say, ChatGPT, for example, to write their admissions essay, because at least today, it cannot. ChatGPT cannot create an essay that understands the life and experiences and goals of the applicant. Even if you were to somehow like pop in your CV or maybe your LinkedIn profile and type in some of your goals and so on, it just does not write an essay that is authentic, interesting, compelling, and so forth. It's not there yet. Now, maybe in a couple of years it'll burlesque. Who knows? It'll be there. But for now, it just can't. So there's a lot of chatter about this fear of lack of academic integrity or people like faking their way into MBA programs. But I personally, I feel it's kind of unfounded at this point, because the machine is not producing something that tells an authentic story. And when you are trying to tell that story, this is the much more qualitative side of the MBA admissions process. And same is true for like masters and management and so on. That based on your work experience, your GMAT score, and your previous academics, it's kind of more of the, if you're eligible, right? The essays get into much more qualitative stuff. And so you're speaking about like your personal values and how that aligns so much with the school, and like the interactions you've had with alumni or professors, and like why you're motivated to be at this school at this time, and like these kind of anecdotes that the machine doesn't know about you and isn't able to make that match yet. So yes, anxiety more, but also I think it's like, yeah. And also I tell people all the time, why would you rob yourself of the experience of writing that essay? Because it is such a journey of self-reflection and discovery, and like trying to like convince some school that you're not really sure is the right fit for you is just because of some ranking or whatever. It isn't, I don't think, the way to go. I think it's really very much, you'll be far more successful in the long term if you're at the right place with the right people.
Well, that brings up a good question, Eric. I mean, how do you do that? You work with students applying to some really fancy, selective, prestigious places, and they need to maintain that authenticity. I struggle with this with my own students when I work with them in class, and they submit assignments using AI, and they kind of add their own voice to it. But how do you help candidates maintain their unique voice while still probably leveraging some of these tools to present them their best selves? Where's the balance?
Yeah, I mean, there is such a thing as oversharing, and this is a topic that's come up sometimes. You know, if you think about, at least in the English-speaking world, in polite conversation, you may avoid things like religion, politics, sex, and so forth. And yet, for some people, for certain applicants, some of those things might be very central to their story. And maintaining that authenticity when talking about, for example, I've had a candidate who is Mormon, and he was concerned, is this something I should talk about? And actually, I think his Mormon experience, which is so central to his life and belief system, values, but also as a young man, at, what was it, 18 or something like that, he spent 2 years in Mexico leading a mission. And he was, I think, kind of even more outstanding. He started an association there for women who were victims of domestic violence, all the while learning Spanish for 2 years and growing his network in another country. I mean, these are some fundamentally interesting skills as a business leader. And the Mormon community at whole is generally great at networking and something that they know. And so actually I was unsure about that. Actually, at one point I spoke to a couple of missions people in leadership, and they were like, we love the Mormons. This is just one example, right? But that kind of hard work ethic and networking mentality is something that really works for them. Another story could be somebody who may have been a victim, him or herself, of some kind of violence, sexual violence, and so forth, and maybe has started an organization or is working in this role to support and help people who also have been. So, you know, everyone's story is different. I think it's important to think about that and how that relates to the school. So it's about understanding the school, knowing it deeply. A good place to start is just look up the mission statement of this school, or if it's within a context of a larger university, of the university itself. What are the core values? And thinking about yourself, right? So one of the things I do as a consultant, the very first meeting, once they've signed on the line and we officially get going, is I do this storytelling interview, right? This storytelling interview, it's the same 30 questions I ask everyone. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 sessions, but it's not just questions about their career. It's about their life, their family, their fears, their successes, what's been fascinating to them. And the point is to, besides getting to know them, because we're about to work together, but to uncover some of these gems, these anecdotes about their life that very often I think applicants undervalue as something that would be interesting for the admissions people in an MBA application. It's surprisingly touchy-feely. Like, schools really want to know that the students have done the research, that they know the people, that they're seeing beyond a ranking or some scholarship, that there is that kind of match. So, you know, my clients tell me after doing that storytelling thing, like, I feel like I've been to the shrink, and like it's kind of like that. But it is a journey in self-discovery or reinforcing what you know about yourself and finding that fit, that triangulation between who am I, what am I good at, what's the future career I want, and what's the school to help me get there. And having goals that are very, like, I would say, specific and realistic. So specific, like well-defined and clear, but also, realistic, that it is possible. Like an MBA or any degree is not some magic wand that's going to, automatically transform you into the career you want to have. Sometimes there are preliminary steps you need to take beforehand, which could include, acquiring some skills, learning a language, growing your network, and so forth.
Struggling to make sense of endless research? At the AI Engage Summit, you'll get a hands on tutorial and meet Notebook LM, Google's AI assistant that transforms complex information like academic papers and lecture videos into content that will engage your target audience. The event is free and virtual. Register now at enrollify.org/engage.
Have to ask about something you touched on there, and having also worked in MBA admission, understanding that many schools are looking for a very diverse student body and a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, despite the somewhat charged nature of those topics in the US right now. How do you see technology either helping or hindering efforts to create more diverse MBA cohorts? Is it about really just highlighting the personal story of each student so that they can see the uniqueness? For example, they want more students with specific backgrounds, certain countries, certain life experiences. Can we do that using technology, or is it really something that's going to rely on that human touch, like kind of how you're describing it? Is there a place for technology in that, or is it sort of just like you have to have that sort of deep dive into who am I, what do I believe, what's special about me, what's unique about my personal story, and then pull that out through this organic process?
I mean, yes to both. I mean, so first of all, we all know that the U.S. Supreme Court in the summer of 2023 got rid of affirmative action, right, in admissions, right? So that was directly a case involving Harvard and UNC. And that resulted in schools in the United States no longer being able to ask questions in the application related to race and other groups, right, protected classes, however you want to describe that. So schools, in conversations I've had with many admissions directors in the States, have had to come up with more creative solutions to be able to continue to attract that kind of diversity that they want to have without breaking law. So this involved their legal departments and teams at each schools to develop a system. That could come in the form of essay questions asked in a different way. That could come in the form of searching for other kinds of data points, like involvement in certain organizations, societies, fraternities, and sororities, perhaps, that are other indicators of where they might have spent their time, which could be indicative of the kind of profile that they have. Because that diversity, let's just face it, like companies have understood for decades, research after research has shown that diversity increases profits and mitigates loss. Following that, schools have done the same. So how can AI help for the school side, perhaps to help generate creative questions that might elicit the responses they want that remain within the framework of today's laws? That could be one way. I can see AI helping the schools. And, as applicants, it's more the second thing that you said about, telling your story, because the applicant is allowed to say what they want, right? The law is not prohibitive in terms of what the applicant says about themselves. It's just there cannot be specific questions about that. So it is a fine line. The other side to AI, and this came up on a post on LinkedIn today, and somebody posted two images, and one was of a watch showing the time as 10:10, and below it said 6:30 p.m. And the other was a right hand writing. And the person asked, why is it so hard to find, or to be able to ask some AI platform to create an image of a watch or a clock that says 6:30 p.m.? And why is it so hard to get an image of a person writing with their left hand? And the response was that for generations, watchmakers have shown timepieces at 10:10 because it sort of looks like a smile. And I suppose subconsciously, happy watch buyers are more likely to buy more watches. So yeah, picture 10:10 p.m. And so there's so many images of watches. Look, just Google watches or clocks. You'll find it yourself, right? There's so many that, this is just a tradition in timepieces to do that. And so, if you're competing against history, right? There's like generations of images of watches and clocks that show that time. So when you ask for 6:30 p.m., you may still get 10:10. And as far as the left hand thing, I think it's because 90% of people are right-handed. And so there's far more images of people writing with their right. So in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, when we're trying to get representation of people of color, for example, or women, and so on and so on, you're competing against the weight of history where almost everything is based on like white men, probably straight men. I mean, like even if you want to take it into like pharmaceutical testing, they're doing like these tests. Almost everything is done on white American males. So that's an issue for women receiving treatment, and us not having enough data about the impact on, say, the menstrual cycle or reproductive health of a woman, as one example. And this goes on for other, races and ethnic groups when we're talking about, okay, how do these medicines affect perhaps people from different backgrounds, ethnically and so forth. Anyway.
No, that kind of brings me to another question, Eric, and it's really interesting to think about that sort of monolithic, homogeneous group that is privileged in some of these processes. I'm concerned about how MBA programs are looking at AI and tech skills in their processes. And when they look at a candidate's profile, some of those experiences relate to where they've come from in their lives. How much experience do they have with technology, with artificial intelligence? Well, they come from a certain demographic where they've had privilege to do that versus others who may not have had those same opportunities. Given what you just said, has there been a shift in how admissions committees are looking at candidates' profiles?
Indeed. I mean, tech used to be some kind of like specialization or like a major or like some kind of like focused within an MBA. And I would put tech and sustainability kind of in the same basket in the sense that if it isn't the case, it should be the case that pretty much every program, tech and sustainability are woven into every program and every course. It is a mindset shift that I think personally we need to embrace moving forward. And I mentioned the 30 questions in my storytelling interview. Probably the newest one is I do specifically ask, what literacy do you have in AI, machine learning, tech, example, ChatGPT? Companies definitely are going to favor people who have these skill sets in terms of like hiring, right? If they're more tech fluid, more artificial intelligence fluid, that's an advantage. And so coming into the MBA, schools would likely show preference to people who are not starting from zero, that already have some kind of foundation, right? So I do ask that question early on, and to weave that into the story of the applicants I'm working with as a selling point. Many schools, it's not just electives in something tech or AI anymore. There's like much more focus, or even like dual degrees, perhaps. I think is something we'll see more of in tech, because that's where the job market is. However, it is worth pointing out that there's this very often cited Wall Street Journal article that came out this January talking about like a downturn in MBA graduates finding employment. The typical metric is like, what percentage of our graduates have found employment within 3 months' time? And schools will say, oh yeah, 97%, 99% or whatever. Maybe that's kind of the thing that people are looking for. Like how quickly can I get a job post MBA? And there's like been a notable decrease from a lot of top schools, including like Harvard and so forth. Well, mostly American schools have been showing it. Europe has been more or less stable, but it was something like 23%, if I recall, of HBS's graduates last year were still looking for employment beyond the 3 months, including in areas like tech and consulting. So that is something that, is standing out to people like, oh, this is like a real change. But at the same time, I feel like we always have these cycles of up and down, and, it's always about adapting to the situation, meaning like, what are the recent, political, economic, environmental, tech, legal, whatever situations. And then like, I think the MBA remains relevant today in 2025 because schools have been staying on the vanguard of that, like making sure that they're adapting so that they're providing a product, very expensive product, but that is still hopefully worthwhile and is creating or furthering business leaders for tomorrow.
And time will tell, right? And I think we're going to leave it there. Eric Lucrezia, Candidate.Coach, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, and good luck.
My pleasure. Thanks for a lot, Ray.
Here's my take. The future of MBA admissions isn't about choosing between technology and human insight. It's about strategic integration. As the conversation with Eric revealed, AI tools are powerful assistants, but they cannot replace the nuanced storytelling and personal authenticity that truly distinguishes a standout candidate for a selective program. The most successful applicants are going to be those who understand how to leverage technology while maintaining their unique voice and personal narrative. For enrollment professionals and aspiring MBA students, the key is adaptability, embracing new tools without losing sight of individual experience and potential. Technology may be changing the application landscape, but human potential and the human touch remains the most compelling metric of success. The Mastering the Next podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Artis Cadieux, J.C. Bonilla, Mallory Wilsey, Brendan Henkel, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.